Good evening.
Recording in progress.
I've learned. I'll call to order the Arvada City Council meeting for August 23rd, 2021. And Kristen Rush, if you'll do the roll call.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Mr. Devon, tonight we have two workshops. Do you want to get us started on the first
We
one?
do, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and we're going to start with the quarterly bond project update, and I'll introduce Director of Public Works, Don Wick.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thanks for having us here tonight. We have an exciting update to provide to you, our quarterly bond project update. Provide an opportunity for you to hear about the status of the projects and the progress that we're making. And as we get started tonight, I'm going to take just a second to introduce the team that you'll be hearing from. I think you all know them, but just in case. So our city engineer, Jacqueline Rhodes, our assistant city engineer, Chris Lesberg. He's also been the project manager for Ralston Road Phase 1, and he'll be speaking about that tonight. Bill Cornelius is our roadway manager, and he is also the project manager for the West 72nd Avenue project. Trang Tran is the project manager for Ralston Road Phase 2. And we also have with us tonight Sylvia Lopo, who is one of our traffic engineers. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Chris Lesberg, who's going to get us kicked off tonight.
Next slide, please. Good evening, all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you all today. I imagine that you all are pretty familiar with the physical limits of most of the projects here listed on our introduction slide. Next slide. Today, as usual, we plan to cover the status, construction budget, schedule, and steps forward for all projects. On Phase 1, we have approximately half of the team demonstrated here on this slide, still working diligently to finish delivery of the project, but I am happy to open up with the good news tonight that we have reached substantial completion on Ralston Road Phase 1. I don't know that that's news for y'all, as I assume on your way in you've noted that a substantial portion of that corridor is completed. Next slide, please. To the point that we've spent 91% of our budget. Out of the $3.4 million we have expected in costs, we've spent $3.1. Obviously, that 91% is slightly misleading as we're still finalizing pay apps, and there's, of course, 5% retention kept from the contractor until final completion. Next slide, please. To drill down into the budget a little bit, I did want to take note that our final expected cost is $5.4 million. Our current funding, you will note, is $5.36. So there is a small shortfall there that we intend to cover with a previously constructed Wadsworth Turn Lanes project that had a surplus of $120,000 at completion of that project. Next slide, please. Just to catch up on the items, May or end of April, the contractor completed top lift, striping, miscellaneous concrete work throughout the corridor, along with completing ADA ramps and placing the pavers at the corners, and then, of course, beautifying the corridor with the landscaping that's currently installed. Currently, we have moved on to the punch list items, which involves many team members from within the city coming out and inspecting the final result. They assemble a list of items that need to be taken care of before final completion is announced, and we're currently in that process right now. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the punch list items are being worked through. We also have to finalize the financials of the project to both close out with the contractor team and CDOT as far as funding reimbursement goes. And then previously we've discussed holding a survey towards the end of the year just to see what the citizens have to say about the newest corridor and to see what the highlights they really enjoy. And with that, we plan for this to be our last address of Ralston Road Phase 1 here within this meeting. So any final questions?
I don't see any.
Wonderful. Thank you all. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Trang Tran to discuss Ralston Phase 2. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, and good evening, council members. Next slide, please. Regarding Ruston Phase 2, as of right now, the status in regards to the budget and the schedule is that we are on week 17 of the 2-year construction duration. We have given the contractor the notice to proceed in early May. And as of this week, we have approximately spent about approximately 38% of the $17.8 million project. We spent approximately $6.8 million on the design, on the right-of-way acquisition, and also on the construction of the roadway as well. Next slide, please. As you could see, we have broken the project into 3 phases. The contractor right now, it's on phase 1, in which they are widening the north side. We have traffic on 1 lane in each direction right now. And in regards to the utility work, it's the drainage relocation on the north side of Ruston Road, and also the water main construction between Brentwood to Allison. We unfortunately have ran into 2 leaks the past 2.5 weeks. And so right now, the contractor have, my understanding today, have fixed the leak. And so we are starting with the final testing in order to move forward tomorrow. So we're really hopeful that we could get, let's say, this portion of the water main completed.
So the leaks were in the new line?
Unfortunately, yes. The leak was in the new line at Ammons about a week ago. And then last Monday is when we had the second leak. And so obviously with multiple leaks on the new line, we asked the contractor to stop to see what we need to do. And so in asking additional question, to us from the city perspective, it's more on the workmanship of the contractor. And so it's not obviously anything from the city side. We rely on the contractor, on the expertise to build a quality project for the city. And so if it doesn't meet our requirements and also meets our contractual obligation, we are working through that process to hopefully come up with a compromise just to move forward. I think for right now, just because it's at the beginning of the project, we don't want, let's say, that relationship to be tattered moving along.
But the flip side is we don't want leaky water lines that causes problems down the road.
That's true, yes. Next slide, please. So in regards to the budget and expenditure, this slide we modify slightly from the last bond meeting from Council Member Marriott's question. We did put in the design. Originally, the right-of-way acquisition negotiation was included in, let's say, the design of the $1.8 million. And so right now, we took the approximately $700,000 from the right-of-way negotiation to be put back in the right-of-way itself. So as you could see, the number in the current expected cost between the design and the right-of-way have been more or less reconciled. Of the $1.26 million in the design, approximately $150,000 of that included the streetscape design that Aura funded for that portion of the project. As of right now, our contract has stayed the same. In regards to the miscellaneous and the contingency, we have approximately $2 million. Next slide, please. Right-of-way. So I'm happy to report that last week, the city received the final signed memorandum of agreement for the right-of-way acquisition. So as of right now, we have possession of all of the properties, either through negotiation or condemnation. As you could see, the majority of the chart itself, we have the properties recorded at the county. We do have, unfortunately, 3 that we are waiting for valuation trial. One is later this year, I believe in November, and then the other two have been rescheduled until next year. Next slide, please. Our current activities, just summarizing from the last several weeks, is that on June 26th, the city did give our contractor the access to the temporary construction easement, in which July 26th would be the start of the 1-year lease for all of these easements, in which the contractor need to finish within that time, the 1-year time frame. If they do not finish that during that 1-year time frame, then the liquidated damages would trickle into the contract, in which they need to reimburse the city $2,000 a day, due to the fact that we need to go back to the property owner and pay them for the additional rental of their property. So as of right now, the contractor, I think, through some of the water issue, they are working hard, having additional crew so that they could finish in the temporary construction easement within that time frame. As I mentioned earlier, we did receive our last memorandum of agreement signed last week, so that's good news. And again, the water line between Brentwood and Allison, to be specifically, they have been installed. The next important piece is on the installation of the water line on Allison that is running north and south. Currently, the water line, we have an AC line. It's an asbestos lined pipe. So due to the road widening, we are rebuilding the AC line to be converted to the PVC line so that it meets current standards. I think the other big part of the project is the relocation of all the dry utilities. Our understanding as of right now, approximately 85 to 90% of that work have been done for Xcel, Comcast, and CenturyLink. As of right now, our expected completion for all of those utility owners would be the end of September. Next slide, please. Okay, I guess that's wrap up for Roston Phase 2. Are there any questions before I turn it over to Bill to talk about 72nd Avenue?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. Next slide. So of the 6 bullet points that was in the previous slide, please, sorry. Those 6 bullet points, primarily I want to talk this evening most specifically about bullet point 3 with an adjusted schedule. As we get more into the slides, I'll address that at a later time. The other 5 bullet points have been typical of the previous presentations, and I'll update you a little bit on those as we go as well. Next slide. So currently, to date, we've spent about $9 million. So we're running a little bit behind on our expenditures due to lack of construction activity. The bar graphs that you see before you on construction packages 1 through 3 illuminate basically the timeline that we have on our schedule and our cost schedule and our timeline schedule as well. So you'll see on construction package 3, which is most important in this case, and we'll dig into this a little bit more on the later slides, would be the construction C&M agreement that will be negotiated starting out probably next month or 2. And then hopefully we'll have that in place in February or March of next year. CP1, we actually are supposed to wrap that up on Halloween of this year. Hopefully that's not an omen for the continuation of the rest of the project. However, the utility companies will be out there through January wrapping up as well. So our contract actually goes through Halloween for SEMA's portion of it, and then Xcel, Comcast, CenturyLink will continue on doing their utility work all the way through the corridor. Next slide. So of those 6 bullet points you see in the status, CP3, I guess plans, I guess I'll highlight that. They're coming about in the next month or so as well. We have CP2 currently 100% complete. We're expecting seal plans over the next week as well. And then as I mentioned earlier, we're going to delay that a little bit due to some utility scheduling for 4 months, and I'll get into the reasoning a little bit later on. But that is the plan right now. We wanted to discuss that with council before we move forward with that decision. There are a host of reasons why it has been delayed. Part of that is utilities, but I'll get into that a little bit later. CP1 is all but complete with tree removal. We still have a few remaining stumps out there to be removed as well. And then we're on CP2, we're just getting ready to get into the CAP, the OPC cost estimate and so forth. So we should have that number within the next month. That'll help with our cost model a little bit more so we have a better picture of where we are in terms of overall budget. Next slide, please. So those 4 pie charts you see, the most notable ones are right-of-way acquisition. It shows that we've spent about 3/4 of our budget on that. We're actually about 100% in reality, though. This is what we've paid out to date. But we've projected, if everyone accepts, and almost everyone has accepted, other than 2 landowners, we're right at 101% on the budget. We have a couple going to condemnation potentially. That could push it up to 108%. The other one that's notable is the design budget. We've almost expended all of that, and we still have a little ways to go. So there could be a potential change order request coming on that, and I do expect that to happen as well. Next slide. This slide, there's just a little sliver of the construction budget on the first donut. Primarily, this slide was left in just so that you could see the budget of all 4 packages, material procurement being the 4th package as well. Next slide. So I earlier mentioned the schedule. So we've already kind of covered that one. We're likely to have that done by January 31st. And then we're moving into schedule or package 2 at that point once we've cleared out all the utilities and we've acquired all the right-of-way. So that's been, next slide please. So as we get into construction package 2, the bullet points that you see before you are really the delays that we've had on package 1 are due primarily to delays by Excel. We lost our tree contractor, so we had to get another tree contractor on board. And then right-of-way acquisition, several parcels have been really slow to acquire. A lot of negotiation, for instance, on First United Church of Arvada, Lincoln Academy, and so forth. And I will note that I did hear today that we will have a MOA signed probably tomorrow from Lincoln Academy as well. So that's been a long, arduous negotiation with them as well. It's been 3 or 4 months in the making. So sort of a pretty good milestone on right-of-way acquisition. On 2, well, like I said, we're developing a new schedule primarily because of these delays. And the good part of that is that this schedule will save us over 100 construction days, nearly $500,000 in fees, and we'll only finish 1 month later, even though we'll start 4 months later. And then basically the savings are based on the leverages on the 3 bullet points, primarily mobilization and traffic control with a little bit that of subcontractor bidding as well. So we expect it to run much more efficient once we have the utility companies out of our way so that we can just build and work on just the contractor's schedule and not have to try to coordinate around all these utility companies as well. So that's where some of the efficiencies come in. Next slide. So this matrix is basically talking about the same thing, what we project will come to council, the date it will come to council, and then the date it will actually get started, and then the completion date of 12/31/23 for package 2. So this kind of almost falls in line with package 3. There will be about a 2-month difference between the two starting dates. So that potentially could be some additional efficiencies we could utilize as well. Next slide, please. Then on package 3, it's the same thing. It's a timeline of everything that has occurred or is about to occur as well. Package 3 is a little bit complicated in the sense that we have really 6 components to that package. We have 4 of those components are part of the railroad, and then 2 components. We have the PUC, the C&M agreement, and then we have 3 design packages with the railroad, and then 1 roadway package with Mueller Consulting as well. So the timeline of all those appear on that matrix as well, so that we really plan to get most of that in place over the next couple of months. Certainly the C&M agreement is the big one that allows us to build the railroad underpass. So we're just about to hit, next slide please. Well, actually I have this a little bit out of order. So I'll get into the little bit of the right-of-way, and I'll finish off on the railroad a little bit later. So the right-of-way that we have, we've closed 55 parcels. Really, when you look at the green and blue, we've closed almost everything, or we have a signed MOA, or we have an agreement, a verbal agreement. So we're really just lacking 2 parcels. You see circled in red over on the right. The parcel on the north side of 72nd Avenue is a key parcel, and the challenge that we've had with that landowner is we made an offer, the higher of the 2 appraisals. He came back with no justification. He wanted almost 3 times what we offered him. So we really had no choice but to send that one on to condemnation. The other one you see circled is really one of the last ones that we have as well, and we've sent that landowner a last and final offer about 9 days ago. He has 10 days to respond, so I'll know something on that one. My gut feeling is that one's likely to head to condemnation as well. So really we're just lacking the 2 parcels on the right-of-way acquisition. Everything else is either signed or the signatures have been agreed to. Next slide. So as I promised, back into the coordination for the railroad. Everything you see in gray has been completed. A pretty good milestone just occurred with the waterline crossing agreement. That occurred about a week ago. So that's one of the 2 major agreements that we will have to have in place. That's for the bore, the 4 bores that we'll have underneath the railroad. This one's for waterline. And then we've just gotten information back or comments back on our 25%. And once we address those comments on 25% track plans, we can then move to 30%. Between those 2, we'll have a site visit by UPRR. Once we have that site visit, we can then start negotiating a construction and maintenance agreement. So that's generally anywhere from 6 to 9 months. We're hoping to expedite that as well. And then
Based upon where you are with this, is it your sense that they've now backed off on the theory of having the road go above the railroad tracks?
Yeah, thankfully, I brought that up with our design consultant several months ago and say we really need to keep pushing this. But with our structure plans, they really did back off of that need. And so everything that we've done since then with the railroad has indicated that they're in agreement. So we think we're in pretty good shape on that.
Right.
It'd be a little late in the game now to change that. Well, we couldn't change it anyway, but especially now. So along with that construction and maintenance agreements, we will use our existing PUC application, change out some exhibits, and that should run concurrent with the C&M agreement as well. So we're in pretty good shape on the railroad, actually. However, we are looking at extending that finish date to June of 2024 instead of February. The cost model that SEMA ran with the schedule model indicates that that's going to take us the extra 4 months. If you recall, we started out 9 months behind, so now we're 4 months behind. We'll look for ways to catch up on that to try to get that closer to February. But right now, the schedule model does indicate June of 2024.
Can we make a note to have the future city council invite us outgoing city council members to the ribbon cutting when that finally opens up?
Yeah, that's absolutely. I'll address that each and every time I come here to make sure that we stay apprised of that milestone, potential milestone. And then finally, next slide, please. Community feedback. These 8 concerns that you see before you, I put the 2 most prevalent ones at the top, the fencing and loss of trees. So obviously, we can't do anything about the trees, but we can certainly address the fencing concerns of all the residents. I will say that the temporary fencing that's gone up, if you've been out along that corridor, was put up nearly immediately after the permanent fencing came down. Short of 1 parcel, it took an extra day. So I haven't heard any complaints lately about fencing. Complaints about trees, they're gone now. So that was a month or so ago that we got a lot of complaints on trees. So now it'll just be mourning of those loss of trees, I guess, for those residents. I'm happy to take questions.
Ms. Ford?
So going back to the trees, they will be mainly replanted though, correct?
We will have north of 200 trees, probably around 240 total. Some of those will be in the median. Most of those will be between the sidewalk and the back of curb. So, every 100 feet or so along that corridor, we'll have trees in the median or on both sides as well. So that's a lot of trees, but not quite as many as we took out.
Do you know how many you took out?
It really depends on how you count those trees. Some of those bigger ones, from a cost estimate, we counted them as 3 or 4, but I believe it was around 300.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
We had an opportunity to potentially add some on private property, most notably First United Church of Arvada, and we still have that opportunity to do that if we want to continue to push for that 300 trees or so. I'm sure they'd be happy to have them. We just can't irrigate them.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll have Jacqueline come up and close this out.
I get the pleasure of doing the takeaways, so hopefully I can leave you with some lasting messages tonight, and that's that we're excited that Ralston Road Phase 1 is substantially complete. Chris mentioned that we had done a communication survey, and some of the pie chart that you see on this slide here reflects some of the responses we received. And interestingly enough, about 30% of our responders were receiving their updates by email. The majority were through the Arvada report. Overall, the findings were that people prefer, over 60% prefer that they continue to provide those updates via email. So with that, it matches our current communications protocols. However, we're pushing in Phase 2 and beyond to just get out the word to be able to sign up for those emails, because that's what we found overwhelmingly. The responses indicated they liked those emails. One other piece that I thought worth mentioning is that there is a slight gap in the new paving from Upham to Wadsworth. And so the city team is looking at ways to fill that gap between the project boundary and the resurfacing going on Wadsworth. So be looking for that over the next coming months. So in Phase 2, you heard relocations are on their way to being complete. And overall, we're excited that the city has immediate possession of all the properties. And then finally for 72nd, we're nearing the completion of 2 of the design packages, excited to reach that 100% phase for CP2 and get those cost estimates dialed in to be able to provide some good forecasts for you. And you heard about some of the proposed adjustments to the schedule, which will provide efficiencies, but also eliminate our float. So there's still risk associated with that change. Overall, the coordination with UP continues, and we're reaching some of that key milestone to get us forward in that CNM agreement. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time this evening, and thank you to our team who's working really hard behind the scenes. We always appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. Any other questions for us?
Ms. Jones?
No questions, just a couple of comments. One, thank you, it was a great update. But my real comment was about 58th and Garrison, the approach into the construction area, there are some pretty serious road hazards, and I'm only aware of that because that's the business I'm in, covering tires. And so I don't know if there's a better way to mitigate some of those, but there are some pretty nasty spots that if I'm in my truck, it's fine, but in my wife's car tonight, it wasn't so fine. So anyway, I don't know if there's a way to have our contractor go back and smooth those out with gravel or whatever it may be, but
we'll take a look
Just
at
for the
that.
motoring public, we don't want to lose a bunch of tires.
So most of those, let's say pothole, those inconvenience, they're due to Sturgeon working on the project and also Sikeway as well. And so the city have been in communication with those utility owner in the past couple of weeks to patch them up as quickly as possible. So we are working
Okay,
as
thank
hard
you.
as we can, and I think for right now it's difficult to get asphalt for a small amount. But I think all of our contractors understand that they need to wrap that up as soon as possible before they leave the project site.
Yeah, okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yeah, great update and great progress. Communication. So if you're going to ask for email, let's just put up, message boards or something that reminds people that they could sign up for updates or something. I thought I remember seeing a little one up once in one of the projects, but maybe if we do them in all the projects, just so people know that they can get their information from somewhere. And then the other thing is, tonight on the way in, I noticed that the construction signs were up saying right lane's closed, but nothing was closing the lane, and then left lane was immediately closed. So I don't know if you're traffic control folks, it's already a headache coming on Ralston Road, but if we can try to make sure we reduce the confusion for the traveling public through those roads, because the signs were all contradicting each other.
Yeah, that's the sign west of Garrison.
Okay.
Yeah, you noticed that too?
Yes,
Because
oh,
I
yeah.
moved over and then I realized I didn't need to move over.
Okay.
And then when you have buses and stuff, so it causes a lot of confusion. So either they need to flip those signs or take them down when the right lane is not closed because it was wide open. So it's those little things to keep our public aware, communicated, and reduce the amount of confusion. As it is, it's already a confusing thing.
Well, and don't have people changing
Okay.
lanes to
Yeah, I
comply
did.
with the sign and then
Yeah.
have to immediately move back over, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Right.
But great job and excited to see progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, great work, great team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And you dressed up for tonight after the field trip today. Okay, Mr. Devon, we'll move on to the second item. Unfortunately, you utilized about 15 minutes of Mr. Archer's presentation time before we came down today, and so you two will have to negotiate that out later.
Yes. I believe for the next item, which is water and sewer infrastructure funding, I believe we're going to start with Sharon Israel. There she is.
We're calling an audible, so that way you don't have to worry about my time.
And Sharon, you've changed for tonight's meeting as well.
This morning, yes.
For those who are watching, we had an excellent tour of our water treatment facility on the west side of town today, and our engineering team and Sharon's team did an excellent job of showing us what they've accomplished and what still needs to be done. It's always good to get boots on the ground and see these things. So thank you for your team, and everybody did a great job of letting us get out there and see everything. So.
Thank you for taking the time. You're invited to geek out with us anytime.
I would
We
encourage
love
other
it.
council members to do it. I know that there were some conflicts with scheduling, so we may be setting up another tour for some folks.
Well, I'm here to kick off the conversation around water and sewer infrastructure funding. I want to point out that Jacqueline Rhodes is going to be back up here in a little bit. She's going to share some of the time with me along with Mr. Archer. We're doing this a little bit differently in terms of order than we have in previous years. As council's aware, we typically come to you with a recommendation for a rate increase on an annual basis. Understanding that our typical philosophy has been to smooth out rate increases, keep them small and incremental, but it helps us keep up with costs. So my predecessor, Jim Sullivan, as you know, had a certain template, and he used that every year to your enjoyment, I believe. And so this year we wanted to do it a little differently because we are introducing service fees to the discussion, which we hadn't done before. And we also have a holistic look at the 10-year model in the context of some of our capital planning needs. You may recall we talked about some of this in December of last year when we presented the findings of the master plan. We continued on the conversation with you in May of this year with a little bit of a heads up on what our needs were going to be, and we got some direction and input from council back in May. So this is the culmination of additional work to describe what it is that we are going to be bringing forward as a more formal request as part of the budget process this year. So one of the goals tonight from this workshop is to get feedback from council on the proposal that we're making, understanding that we still have some time through the rest of the budget process to formalize our request and bring it to you in ordinance. Next slide. So we're going to do a little bit of background, a reminder of philosophy, things like what we do with our rates versus what we do with our tap fees, a recap very briefly on some of the master plan findings. We will discuss an update to the needs assessment that we presented to you in May. We'll be talking about water today, which has been the primary focus of the last couple workshops. But we're also going to be sharing some new information from the sewer master plan and the stormwater master plan that are going to be completed by the end of this year. And then we'll get to the nuts and bolts of our recommendations for rates and service fees and a discussion of the 10-year model for all three of the enterprise funds, water, sewer, and stormwater. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so you may recall this slide. This is why we do this. It's not just for drinking water. That is my son Ian up there. He's a second grader at Sierra Elementary here in Arvada. But we also do it for beautiful landscaping. We do it because we need to make sure that it's safe, reliable all the time. And we also make sure that our system is designed for the Arvada fire partners to be able to use our system for water to fight fires. Let me just point out too, I mentioned my son's up there. I'm a 16-year resident of Arvada. I live up in Lake Arbor. And so when we're talking about this system and the remarks you'll hear from me this evening, it's my home. It's been my home for a long time. So it is a privilege to be able to do this kind of work here in Arvada. Next slide. You may recall this slide from the last couple presentations. We had done some visioning type work internally leading up to finalizing our master plan. No surprise, we want reliable water, we want safe water, we want secure water, and so these words have been our touchstones as we've been preparing for how to execute the master plan findings and also prepare for what we're presenting to you this evening. Next slide. There is a strategic alignment to all of this. So it's reflected in the city's strategic plan, both in terms of the principles of the infrastructure work system. You may recall the principles specifically talk about replacing aging infrastructure. That's something we'll dig into tonight. Also maintaining the lowest practical rates. We also have the strategic results in the strategic plan where council directed us to create master plans for water, sewer, and stormwater. We are on track to have all three of those complete by the end of this calendar year. And also, we were directed by council to make sure there's sufficient supply of water, the wet water, for a comprehensive plan build out. And as you're aware, we're looking at the Gross Reservoir project in that context. Next slide. So the master plan findings we started presenting to you in December and we're fine-tuning in May are in two big categories, aging infrastructure. So this is the type of work that for those of you on the tour today, you may recall you saw some of it. This is equipment, buildings, specialty sampling and monitoring equipment, as well as just the physical structure of our filters. We just have a lot of aging infrastructure. Our plant is, our workhorse plant is going to be 60 years old next year. We've done some good reinvestment over the years, but it's time to do a big lift for that. The other component of our master plan findings is in the capacity building category. So this is ensuring that we have sufficient capacity to meet the demand for planned development, again, both on the water and the sewer side. I also want to point out here, because we're talking about funding this evening, philosophically, the aging infrastructure, the reinvestment type work, comes from our service fees and from our rates. And then philosophically, the capacity additions that we make to our infrastructure, that comes from tap fees. So next slide. Thank you. So in May, we proposed a series of next steps that we would take to address financial needs we had identified. One was to adjust service charges for next year for the first time since 2009. We've got a specific recommendation for your consideration tonight and to get your feedback. One option, and we'd like your feedback on this too, is we could introduce a new infrastructure reinvestment fee. What this would look like, and part of the reason we're recommending it, is it provides some transparency to our customers. Eventually, we won't have tap fees anymore, or at least very minimal tap fees. We're in a time of planned development that will give us a significant amount of revenue over the next 20 years in terms of tap fees, but that's going to eventually go away. And so what we're looking to do is establish a fee structure where dollars can come in and those can be allocated to those reinvestment needs. And we'll, again, talk more about this in the next few slides. We also recommended a similar rate increase as previous years. We are bringing that to you this evening. We also talked about a tap fee study. We are conducting that right now with the goal of having a tap fee recommendation to you by first quarter of next year. We are looking at, specifically, there are two categories of funding that may be available in addition to bonds. One is the Colorado Water Grant Program, and one is the State Revolving Loan Fund Program. Both of those are the mechanisms by which federal infrastructure dollars will be coming into the state of Colorado. So you're following the headlines, all the infrastructure money that is the federal government's looking to reinvest across the country coming into Colorado will certainly be in at least these two programs. So we're looking at what we need to do for Arvada to be positioned for some of that. We kicked around the idea of a bond issue for the water side, just some planning estimates in the $100 million range. As you'll hear from Brian in a bit, we've started to program what that could look like in a 10-year model in terms of bond payments. And then the last, I feel like this is important because we have across the, we actually have 4 enterprise funds if you include waste hauling, so water, wastewater, stormwater, and waste hauling, $57 million of revenue projected next year. So when we have that kind of money, it's really important to make sure that we're allocating each dollar appropriately because of the enterprise fund nature of all these dollars. Everything we're talking about tonight is enterprise fund, and so that means, as a matter of law, that we are required to, as we receive money into that fund, we spend it specifically on the functions associated with that revenue coming in. So as a practical matter, now we've got 4 different types of money that's being billed on our utility bills. So that's water, sewer, storm, and waste hauling. We would just want to make sure that in the next couple of years, we take a good close look at how those dollars are allocated. Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to pause from the words and show you some pictures. And for those of you who who were there on the tour this morning, some of this might look familiar. I also am trying to really keep this from being boring. So for those of you who maybe have seen or heard of The Daily Show and Trevor Noah, he's a comedian, and he did a piece on water infrastructure a few months ago. And his punchline kept coming back to how infrastructure is just boring, and so I don't think it's boring, but in the interest of showing you some pictures and maybe mixing it up, here we go. So this is a picture of Brad Wyant. He is pointing to the ceiling in his office at the Ralston Water Treatment Plant. We need a new roof on the plant. This has since been repaired. The roof is going to cost us $2 million based on the last estimate. We are not bringing that to you this evening because we think that we can get through the next 5 years with just patching it. But this tells a story that we're not asking for everything we obviously need. We are able to kind of get by with some patchwork in the meantime. Next slide. Okay, this is You can see a bit dated aspect of our control system at our Arvada treatment plant. For those of you guys who were on the tour, maybe you saw this today. This functions, so there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. However, it's very difficult to buy replacement parts. And then also from a security standpoint, there's a vulnerability here. We've got closets full of what we call our spaghetti. And so one of the unfunded needs that we have is to be able to upgrade and update this so it's more secure, more resilient. Next slide. This is a control system that's currently in operation. I like it because it reminds me of Radio Shack. For those of you guys who remember Radio Shack, you can go and buy those buttons and dials and things. It still works. It's functional. However, again, one of our challenges is buying replacement parts for it anymore. Next slide. This is a photo. You didn't see this on the tour today, but this is the inlet where we take water in from Arvada Reservoir, and it gets piped to our treatment plants. And so what you see here is, if you can picture Arvada Reservoir, there's a sort of a concrete structure that juts out into the reservoir itself. You can walk out onto it, and this is where we've got gates that slide up and down and then release water into the pipes that go to the plant. So you can see there's some corrosion, there's, it's aging. But the real interesting aspects of this is that we have trouble keeping the gates open. We can open them with a motorized mechanism, but then they start to slowly drop. So our solution is to chain them open, and it works. It works to chain them open, so there's nothing wrong with that. But it's another example of sort of a piece of equipment and infrastructure that is no longer functioning the way it's designed. Again, this is not on the budget request either. I just want to show you that we're not asking for everything under the sun. This is reflective to me of a culture and an ethic that we have within the utilities operations team, where they're going to make stuff work as much as they possibly can. The next slide. This is the last of my series of pictures on the needs assessment. These were both taken in the last few weeks. On the left side, that is a photo of the High Park fire burn area in Larimer County. That happened about 9 years ago. And so what you see there is still the devastation of the burned forest and just a little baby forest starting to grow. And I took that myself off a four-wheel drive road. And that is the watershed up there in the Pooter. And I wanted to show that because we're looking closely at what could happen in Clear Creek, in our Clear Creek Basin. 25% of our water supply comes from the Clear Creek Basin. The Clear Creek Basin has not had a devastating wildfire like this. But I'm showing this picture because even after almost 10 years, the watershed's nowhere close to being revegetated, and that has a major impact on the source water quality. On the right, that's a photo that was taken after some of the July storms. That is water coming in from the church ditch, which feeds off Clear Creek, and that's water flowing into Arvada Reservoir. You can see that brown sort of plume of muddy water. That is something that's not unusual, but if we were to have something like a wildfire in our watershed, that impact to the church ditch and the other ditches out of Clear Creek, that would be our permanent water quality that we have to be treating for years to come. And so we can do it periodically. It's costly in terms of chemicals, and it certainly stresses our filters. Next slide. So overall, there's a few adjustments since our May needs assessment that we presented to you. Big ones are we've had an increase in some of the cost estimates associated with our projects. Jacqueline's going to talk in more detail. You can also refer to the handout. We've got a one-pager for you that's got some specifics if you want to see what projects fold into that unfunded number of $236 million. Since May, we've also added staff that we needed for both project management and technical leadership. We are growing an amazing A-team here. I've worked with Colorado Water Systems for 20 years. We've got exceptional talent coming in from the public and private sector attracted to, I think, the momentum that we've got here in Arvada to do some really great work. So we've hired a couple of those. We are now hearing from Denver Water, and we expect it to be official in November of this year, that we can expect Gross Reservoir to cost us over $40,000 per acre foot, which is over $120 million total. I expect to be able to provide more information on that later this year. It's going to be really important when we talk about tap fees. So when I bring you a tap fee proposal, first quarter of next year, we will have more firm numbers on what that acre foot cost is. I want to point out that, as a reminder, our current tap fees are indexed to a raw water cost of $24,000. So to go from $24,000 to $40,000 is significant, and as you'll hear us talk about with the 10-year model, we are already proposing some guesstimates in terms of what a tap fee would need to be to account just for the increased cost of raw water. Also, we've got some updates, and Jacqueline will be sharing them with you, a little bit on our sewer and stormwater master plans. So we're about where we were this time last year with our water master plan. We're getting close to the complete set of findings, but we want to give you a little bit of an update today on that. Next slide. So I'm going to go to, I think this is my last slide that I'll be speaking to, and then Jacqueline, I'll step up. But I wanted to share what's going on with Gross Reservoir. So I already mentioned that in November of this year, we expect the Denver Water Board to hear the latest update for cost estimate for Gross Reservoir. We are expecting a construction date to start in the summer of 2022, and then construction would continue through 2027 with deliveries in 2028 of water from that facility. There is a lawsuit going on right now where Denver Water has filed a lawsuit against Boulder County related to the permitting process, the goal of which is to continue to keep the Denver Water project on track. As you are aware, this gives us 3,000 additional acre feet in terms of supply, so it helps beef up our supply and get us to the comprehensive plan build-out numbers. But the other thing that it does is it really strengthens the resiliency of Denver Water's supply system on the north side. So if you can picture what's going on with Lake Mead or Lake Powell, and you've seen how dramatically the water level has dropped even just this past year, all those bathtub rings. If those dams had been built a little higher, they would have been able to store that much more in their wet and average years. That's what we're trying to do here with Gross Reservoir, is store more in our wet and average years, so we've got that much more storage that'll get us through drought times. So it's got, for Arvada, double benefit, both in terms of giving us some more supply for build-out, but also just increasing the resiliency on the north side. Next slide. Okay, this is Jacqueline's turn. Jacqueline?
Well, thank you again. So in front of you, you have a larger printout that hopefully is a little bit more legible than what's shown on the slide. But what I hope to convey to you today is that our team is working hard to deliver a number of the funded project priorities that we've been talking about. So across the top of the list, we have shown in gray some of the recently completed projects, and we were really excited to spend some time showing you those pump stations, chemical feed systems, et cetera, at the treatment plant today. There's a number of projects underway, so again, being able to build up our engineering team with utilities engineering specialty has allowed us to continue to move forward with a number of these projects. And so I wanted to just convey the amount of work that is underway currently. And then as well as what's up for 2022. I think you heard us say, I guess, back in May and even previously in December that we anticipated 2021 to be a very busy year, and I hope to convey to you that we've been busy delivering this work. As Sharon mentioned in the lower half, we've been continually updating our projections based off the master plan findings, and as we advance some of those projects through conceptual design, we're getting updated cost estimates to include, as well as trying to find refinements and cost savings through some of our hydraulic modeling. So some of those examples are shown in the lower half of the chart. Next slide, please. Just a very brief update on the sewer master plan. We're going to be coming back. Both the sewer master plan and the stormwater master plan are underway and scheduled to be complete by the end of the year. So we'll be coming back in another workshop setting and starting over this process that we've done with the water system to communicate to you the findings of the master plans for both our sewer system and stormwater systems. Just shown as an example here, one of the priority areas for assessment within the master plan was to really look at the capacity of our north trunk line. So shown in this figure shows some of our zones that we serve and the major trunk lines that convey the wastewater to our metering stations where those are sent on for treatment. But this was one of our priority areas of assessment because we have some known bottlenecks in the system, and we wanted to really look at and better understand what upgrades are needed in that north trunk line that we could start work on the design projects today. So shown in this figure is just an example for a 25-year storm. Some areas highlighted in red will be some projects that will likely be prioritized out of the master planning effort as some of our higher priority needs that we'll come back to you and share. And as a team, I'll just note that while 25-year storm might be aspirational to some or standard for some in terms of what we design our improvements for, as a team, we're doing some level of service workshops that have resulted in a policy document. And this goes across not just sewer, but our water system level of service, stormwater, et cetera, across all of the utilities that are helping us really dial in and kind of fine tune what our design criteria are going to target. So again, we have a good understanding of any impacts to our level of service goals when we prioritize these projects. Next slide, please.
Can
Okay,
I ask
we
a
got a
quick
couple
question
questions.
on that prior slide?
Mhm.
So just curious, I see that there's a couple of private lift stations, and then there are a couple of city-owned lift stations. How does that work? How do we determine, and why do we contract out the lift stations?
So I might turn to Sharon to answer some of the history with that, but that is a piece of this analysis, particularly as we look at not just quantity of water, but quality of water and how we're billed for, as the city, for how we pay Metro for those services. So in terms of this, it's very important as we think about the cost for others who are also connected to our system and we're metering that. We want to look at both controlling quality and the loadings in that wastewater, as well as just quantity. Sharon, do you have anything else to add to the history of those lift stations, those connections?
Okay, thank you. So we try to stay out of the business of lift stations. So I'll just say that as a matter of practical matter. Partly because they are, they require a significant amount of maintenance. So anything that gets flushed down the toilet can jam up those pumps, and it does. They're also costly in terms of power. We really try to keep most of our sewer running on gravity. So the two lift stations that the city is responsible for are ones that, during the development of that area where there was really no other option. The really small ones that we have or that are operated by others, the city does not have any responsibility.
But to your point, the city would rather be out of the lift station business.
That's exactly right.
Okay, no,
yes.
That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ford?
No, I had it for something else.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Next slide, please. So Stormwater Master Plan, similarly, we're going to be coming back with a list of prioritized CIP projects. This is just an example out of the draft report that includes some known hotspot areas that we're going to overlay historical drainage complaints in our current CIP plan and help define the highest priority areas for us to focus our dollars on for the stormwater improvements. So work underway this year includes not just wrapping up the master plan, but coming up with a more programmatic element for our miscellaneous drainage program. So again, any projects, whether currently funded or through the miscellaneous drainage complaints that we address routinely, we're focusing on those highest priority hotspot areas. Next slide, please. So just in conclusion here, back to the water system needs specific to treatment and distribution. I mentioned that the teams has been working internally to complete a level of service project. So that's defining what safe, reliable, and secure mean and coming out of that with a policy document that helped kind of set that foundation for all of our needs moving ahead. We're also embarking in a demand forecasting study, so this helps us define how much and when as we look at conservation trends. We can really do some sophisticated scenario planning to look at water demand and what that's going to look like at build out, so that we're right sizing our facilities now and then phasing those expansions appropriately. And then finally, asset management. We're building internally a much larger asset database where we can look at condition and criticality of all of our assets, so we can properly scope and then phase the work to really only put that reinvestment into those projects that need to be replaced now versus how we can extend the life to future years. So I think that's my last slide. Next slide. I'll hand it back to Sharon unless there's any other questions about funded or unfunded projects.
No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline's also an Arvada resident, by the way, so we really love geeking out about our community. Also, I brought my phone up here, not because I'm expecting a call, but in case I need to calculate something, if you guys ask me a math question. I'll be ready. Next slide. So before we talk about the recommendations for rates and service fees for next year, I want to talk about our current state. So our current state, we have a bi-monthly service fee. It has not increased since 2009. That's $5.83 bi-monthly, so every 2 months. And then sewer is $2.44. I love this back in 1986. I remember 1986. The bi-monthly water rate was $4.30. And for sewer is $1.20. So you can see there's been just a very moderate increase in the last 30 years. We use that for replacing meters primarily. We're looking at, from a policy and philosophical perspective, to be using that service fee to start to build our ability to pay for reinvestment. So not just replacing meters, but replacing other types of infrastructure. I'm going to show you a slide of where we fall in with other comparable cities, but just have this in your mind that the median for comparable cities on a bi-monthly basis is $25.86. So almost exactly $20 more than what we're charging. And then sewer median is $6.22. The middle block there describes where our rates are. So if you look at the last 15 years of water rates, we've typically raised the rates on average 4.1% for water and 5.4% for sewer. That surprised me because I looked at the last few years, and I would say in the last 6 to 8, our rate increases have been relatively lower than that. But if you look back in the mid-2000s, they were quite a bit higher. We did do a 2018 rate study where we evaluated a variety of different rate structures. Right now we have 3 major blocks, but we could do a lot of different, there's a lot of other creative types of rate structures that are out there. That sort of bucket of money that pays for our personnel, that pays for our operating expenses, pays for our raw water contract with Denver Water, and then some reinvestment related capital projects. And then our tap fees are our third bucket. So the way I look at it is, when we are trying to raise revenue or address our financial needs, we have 3 dials to turn. We can turn our bi-monthly service fees, our rates, or our tap fees. Our tap fees haven't been increased for about 5 years. And as I mentioned earlier, we already have some expenses associated with raw water that we know are not fully covered right now with our existing tap fees. We are going to be looking at that in the next few months with a recommendation for next year. I also want to point out that that those ranges are fully loaded, so that's the water, the sewer, a Metro Water Recovery is their new name, formerly Metro Wastewater. And they charge a tap fee for every new tap that we have in Arvada, and then also a small amount of money for parks to provide them some resources to be able to have water for parks. The reason that there's a range that's all for single-family homes is we do have portions of the city that are in developments where, as part of the original development agreement, there was a water provided to us in the way of shares in the ditches and in consolidated mutual. water company, and so we gave them a discount, and that's why, some of those tap fees are at the 18,000 level instead of 25. Next slide. So this is what we're proposing for 2022. We are proposing, for the first time since 2009, to add to the bi-monthly service fee charges. We're proposing to increase $2 a month for water and $1 a month for sewer. That would get us to $9.83 for water and $4.44 for sewer. Again, you can see there at the bottom, still well below the median. But we believe that this is a prudent step for the city to be taking in terms of raising revenue in light of the known capital project needs. We're also recommending that there's a 3.4% increase for water rates and a 2.6% increase for sewer rates. That's in keeping with our standard range for rates. We believe that that's appropriate and would cover the operating expenses and increases to the Denver water contract. And then again, the tap fees, we would be revisiting that with you early next year. So next slide. This one will look familiar. This is the template that Jim Sullivan, my predecessor, brought to you each year. So I'm going to give you a moment to digest what you see here. This is what a single-family home with a typical pattern of usage would see in their utility bill for water, sewer, and storm from 2021 compared to 2022. If council saw fit to give the approval for the small rate increase and small service fee increase. The total would be just over $56 per year, or a little less than $5 per month. You can see that at this rate, we would still be below our neighbors by, frankly, a significant amount. Next slide. So I promised I would show you where we fall with service fees. So on the far left is where Arvada stands with service fees, and then what we propose is just to the right. So the proposal is that $2 a month or $4 on a bi-monthly basis service fee increase to $9.83. Again, with the median in the area being $25.86.
So are those service fees included in the annual rates?
Yes.
On that previous slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Would you like to see the previous slide again?
No, that's fine.
Yes.
But they are included.
They are, yes, that's correct. So that's where we stand with water. Next slide, just to compare, again, the median of where our neighbors are. Our neighbors are, I do want to point out that a few of them do not charge a monthly service fee. All of them are overall loaded higher than we are. And so that is just, that's a policy decision that they've made. And again, we could make that too. But our recommendation is to increase the service fee for sewer by $1 a month, understanding that we have the master plan coming and there are already some significant projects. And back to philosophically how we've tried to sort of smoothly increase costs to our customers over time. By adjusting it $1 this year, we know that that's going to start to close the gap on the needs that we already see coming out of the sewer master plan.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Sorry, it's taking me a while to catch up with you because you're going through numbers. They're not
Yes.
side by side, so I have to pull up my computer to see what you're doing over here. So I want to go back to slide 22.
Okay. Kevin?
And I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. I think I understand what you did. So when you say here that you increased $2 per month, this is a bi-monthly up above. So it's actually $4.
Yes. Thank you.
And the one down below said per month. So you should have said bi-monthly, just make it easier for all of us. And because the previous slide, if you go to 21, you talk about bi-monthly there.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. It is $4 increase, not $2.
Yes.
And it's $2 for sewer, I think it is, not $1.
Yes, so if you look at the time, and I apologize for the confusion, this came up in our dry run, and I really tried to clean up all of the monthly versus bi-monthly. So the $5.83 is currently bi-monthly. That would go to $9.83 bi-monthly. The sewer is currently $2.44 bi-monthly. That would go to $4.44 bi-monthly.
So currently about, what's that? That would be like an 80% increase. I wish there was percentages. Good thing you brought your phone.
Yes, I brought my phone. I can also tell you that let's start with water. So $2 a month, the revenue we would receive at $2 additional a month, that's the $4 bi-monthly. That would be equivalent to a 3.6% rate increase based on our model.
So wait, you have it as $5.83 bi-monthly service fee. And then now, how did you get to 3% on the fee?
So a $2 a month estimated revenue is, I did a little bit of math beforehand, is $858,000 in revenue. A 1% increase in water revenue, or water rates rather, it's $236,000.
Well, let's stay on one subject, not the rates. Let's stick with the service fees.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I thought that's what you were asking.
No, I'm only staying on the fees right now. I don't want to go to the rates just yet, because I think the rates have been normalized over time. I think we're pretty familiar with the rates. It's the fees are what's new for us to be discussing, because if we're all used to seeing on our bills, $5, $2, $6, $3 fees, and it doubles, that's going to draw some attention. And so I just need to understand how you came about that and how we are explaining that to our public. Because right now, if I'm confused, I'm sure our users will be confused, our customers. So with the fees, it's like an 80% increase, right? Because it's not quite double. It's going from $5.83 bi-monthly to $9.83 bi-monthly.
I see what you're saying. I was confused by your question. So yes, if you look percentage-wise, adding $1 or adding $2 bi-monthly or $4 bi-monthly, that is a significant percentage increase. What we've started to talk about in the 10-year model, and I don't want to get ahead of Brian, is making a sort of stepwise move toward trying to get to the median of where the other cities are this year. And the reasoning for that is we need the funding to cover the CIP needs in the next 10 years. The way we can do that is by raising service fees so we can make a bond payment. That's where those numbers came from, is we can incrementally in the 10-year model, and again, I don't want to get ahead of Brian, incrementally, if we increase service fees, then we can get to the point where we can make a payment for a bond. And that $200 million or so unfunded list, we can start to chip away at that.
Okay, so you're talking about bonding the 236 million. 236 million.
Not the entire amount right now.
Well, I don't know who's responsible. Because at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? I'm trying to follow what are we trying to achieve, because I cringe thinking of $25 service fees on water and $25 on sewer. So, I mean, I already pay $400 or $500 I feel like now. So I want to understand how we're going from $5 to $25. What's our path forward? What are we trying to achieve? Because I'm trying to follow you, but
Okay.
I'm a little concerned on us jumping the fees up and without us buying on your first fee jump yet, and you're already trying to solve for the $25 one.
Yes. So let me apologize for not getting the story up in front of where
It could be
where
me.
we are.
Don't worry, it could be me.
So the needs assessment, back to, and you can review
Right.
this here. So when we did the master plan work, and we presented that in December, we knew that we had some unfunded capital needs. We are not able to fully cash fund the capital needs and then also fund the Gross Reservoir project in that time frame, in the next 10 years. We also determined from the master plan findings is we don't have another 10 years to further delay some of the reinvestment that needs to be done or delay some of the capacity development that needs to be done. So by discussing service fees in the context of almost an equivalence to a tap fee type structure, then that allows us to stabilize a revenue source. And so rates kind of go up and down based on weather, the rate charges, I should say. If we have a stable revenue source, then we're in a much better position to be able to craft a financial plan that will allow us to start to close the gap on the unfunded list.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait till see what he says, because my concern is we raise fees for one-time projects, but fees never come back down. So I'm just trying to follow.
Understood.
What are we trying to achieve? If this is like 50 years worth of payments or what it is, because, you know, we have other problems with other infrastructure and we don't have a revenue source that the voters have approved for. So, but here we're going to be adding fees to this program to cover. I'm a little confused still on what you're saying, because you said partially of the $236 million, but we don't have enough money to fund all the gross reservoir participation, even though it's up above as the funded. You mentioned the gross reservoir was not fully funded either.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I'm happy to answer any of these detailed questions. I think the overarching kind of maybe proposal that we're making is that by raising service fees, that allows us to
Get you more money.
fund. Well, it allows us to fund the CIP projects, and from a sort of best practice standpoint, that's where we see what our neighbors are doing. We see what the American Water Works Association best practices are, and more folks like our utility here are moving toward a model where a larger percentage of revenue comes from fixed fees.
And now I'll wait for the rest of the presentation. I will say that I don't want to jump to the conclusion that raising fees is going to solve everything we need. I'd like to understand why, because also our neighbors had issues around their fees as well. And so I just need to make sure I understand. Just because everyone else is doing it means that we don't have to do it. But I need still the story to get to that point. I'll wait till Brian until you finish your presentation. But I was just trying to follow along on how fast this stuff was jumping up, and I just wasn't following your story. So I didn't mean to digress there. So I might have several more questions around this a little bit later.
Yeah, I think once you see the 10-year model and where we've sort of programmed some of the CIP project payments, where we programmed in some of the potential bond payments, I think you'll get a fuller picture, at least, of the next 10 years.
Let me interject here a question I think council is going to have to address at some point. You're talking about either increasing the bi-monthly service fees or creating a new fee for infrastructure reinvestment fee. Personally, I think that there is such a flavor of our citizens out there that creating new fees is not attractive. I'm frankly more comfortable with increasing existing fees, indicate that a portion of it is for reinvestment, but not creating new fees. That's just my personal, and we'll see where the rest of council comes down on that, but that's just my immediate thought on that concept.
Thank you.
Okay, no more lights on, so you can get back to where you were going.
Thank you. All right, next slide, Kevin. Okay, so these were the medians. Next slide. The other piece of this that we haven't talked about is the waste hauling fee, which we are very sensitive that this is all talking about going on the same bill. So again, this is the projected change from our current to our proposed fully loaded water, sewer, and stormwater bill. Next slide. I wanted to just take a moment and show where this then puts us. If you were going to put that $5.13 minimum service fee on the same bill, For those of our residents who choose the minimum service level, that annual cost is $61.56. So I just wanted to point out that if we get to $798 per the proposal we brought to you this evening, we're at $860 total when you add the waste hauling fees. So I just wanted to point out that that's still below where the others are for their fully loaded water, sewer, and stormwater. But I brought it up for the interest of transparency and the discussion with the public, because these are all fees that we're talking about that people will see on their bills from the city.
Are any of these other municipalities have waste hauling as part of the fee numbers that are represented here?
None of those, no.
Okay.
So the comparables here are just the water, sewer, stormwater. We discussed, it's a little hard to compare apples to apples when you're talking about different waste hauling structures, so we didn't go so far as to do that.
Okay, go ahead.
Next slide. Okay, so Brian's going to talk about the 3 enterprise funds and the 10-year models, some of the assumptions that we built in, and the proposed incremental increases. Brian, thanks.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Council. So let's talk numbers. I know you've been so excited and waiting patiently to do this. So let me add a little bit more to what we've been trying to do. So ultimately, through the master planning, we know that we have a pretty big lift of projects that we need to find funding for. And so there's many different ways to find funding. Certainly, you can raise water rates, you can raise fees, you can come up with a new fee, a lot of the items that we've presented today. And so what the team has worked on is really a combination of all the above, really trying to keep our water fee increases tied to operations and figure out some sort of ongoing, very consistent revenue source, much like a tap fee, that we can then apply to reinvestment. So we're calling that service fee now. And Sharon pointed out that we're really far behind all of our peer cities and really far behind the average. And so what we're proposing in this 10-year plan allows us to move that fee up to the average, create an inelastic revenue, so something that we can count on every year, and something that is very easy for us to either bond off of or set future capital projects off of. And so financially, it's the right thing to do. It's difficult to get there, obviously. And what we're showing up here in this 10-year model shows a fee increase every year for 5 years. So what we're proposing is that $2 fee increase in the first year, but then it would be $2 again in the next year, and the next year, and the next year, until you get to that $25 bi-monthly fee charge. Again, that's
Brian, aren't those other communities going to be increasing theirs annually, so we're always going to be behind the
Yeah, pretty much
median?
what Sharon demonstrated up there again was comparing to 2 years ago's data as well. And so if you were to compare us to what's going to happen next year, we're going to be even lower than that. And so yes, we are constantly chasing. Thank you, Mr. Williams. That's a very good question. The other thing we built into this is increasing our operating revenues, or what we would call water fees or water usage, at the pretty much average 3.6%, I think, or 3.4%. Is kind of what, it's below the average of 4.1 that you saw earlier, but it gives us the ability to pay for things like increases at Denver Metro, increases for power, staffing, salary changes, healthcare, operating increases, et cetera. If we were able to create that service fee and create that ongoing revenue source, we could then bond off of it in future years. And so this model also represents a bonding proposal in 2025 at about 72 million. That's nowhere near the 236 million that we've identified from a gapping perspective, but it gets us closer. It also allows us to fully fund gross. The challenge there is not what we've set aside, it's the escalating costs that we're probably going to get from Denver Water in November. That's the gap that we have to make up. And that's anywhere from 8 to 10 million today that we're thinking that we're going to end up with. This model allows us to do that as well. The final thing in this model is the proposed tap fee increase. So the numbers that Sharon provided you were 67% below market. So we're charging $24,000, we buy at $40,000. So we're obviously losing money for every tap that we sell as the city. And so we would propose not even getting all the way to that $40,000, but closing that gap. And so in the model we built, basically what works out to be a 25% increase in 2023, a 25% increase in 2024. We'll actually probably start that sooner, and so that increases will be a little bit smaller over that period of time, but that's what we built into the model. Mathematically, that's whatever, 57% or something like that. And that puts us at about 37,000 per acre foot versus 40,000. That also helps us in the short term until those tap fees run out, till we hit build out, and then we again have to look for another revenue source, ongoing source to provide those dollars.
Mr.
Brian,
Marriott first, and then Mr. Pfeiffer.
Can I just clarify something? You were mentioning, the tap fee versus what an acre foot of water costs, but a tap fee shouldn't equate to an acre foot. Is that correct, Ms. Israel?
I'm going to have to phone a friend on that one.
Yeah.
For planning purposes in Arvada, we estimate that 1 acre foot can serve 2 households.
Right, so it would be about half that.
That's right. So $13,000 of our current tap fee is specifically just for water supply.
Right, okay. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Okay, I'll go at this again. You gotta bear with me on it. So we're not trying to solve anything right now. It's for the possibility of bonding one day and trying to catch our fees up.
This is one scenario.
One
yes.
scenario.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we go back and talk about the unfunded, but kind of, I guess what's sticking in my head is a lot of these are one-time funds, one-time projects, right? And so your revenue is already sustaining a certain trajectory. And when these one-time projects fall off, you'll put in other projects that go along in there. So I'm hearing the story that the unfunded projects, we need a bond or we need to do something. This is what I'm hearing from you. But in reality, I'm saying that when other projects are already paid for and they're funded and they've been met, you should be able to put some of the unfunded and they fall up to the funded on our current revenue
would if those
trajectory.
projects were all the same dollar amount. Many of these projects are pretty large in nature. So for example, if we're going to replace our treatment facility, I think that project is 90 million or so, and it's going up from there because we're just doing preliminary designs. And so the challenge to that is certainly these are some large reinvestments that we need to do today that will last 30, 40, 50 years down the road.
Right.
So your logic is very sound, but these dollars are just a little too big to make that work.
So on
in this model.
On the 93 million, well, it doesn't say, but it's fiscal year 26. Just like we saved up for Gross Reservoir, we don't want to save up with any extra dollars to go there as well. It's a multi-year project, so you would think you don't need 93 million up front.
True.
You just need to have a 93 million over a 3-year span or however long the expansion would be, right?
That is correct.
So
but our model doesn't spin off that level of revenue.
And so, okay, so we get to, if you add $5, let's go back to the 20. So the $25 a month you'll add on water, right? It's just water.
That's correct.
Gains us, what was the number? About 800 and some thousand a year?
So each, I know you know this better than I do, but each dollar in water equates to 400 and some thousand.
About 428,000.
Yeah, about 428.
428 for every dollar.
Yeah.
But these service fees would they be earmarked to a particular activity like capital reinvestment, or so they wouldn't go to anything else but capital? Okay. And like the mayor was saying, what's the likelihood in whatever 5 years for us to get the extra 25, or I don't know, when I hit the $25 mark, 3-4 years, what's the likelihood of the other cities being higher? I mean, is it there, or is it pretty stable right now?
No, they pretty much go up every year.
Because I mean, look at us. I mean, we didn't move ours for, what was that, 12 years?
Yeah, we made a conscious decision to not do that.
Well, and that's why I'm trying to tease this all out, is I want to make sure I understand the conscious decision back then in the last 12, 13 years that we haven't done it. Now, granted, we have new vision, new eyes, looking over our infrastructure, and I can see our path forward on it. I just want to make sure I fully understand, because if somebody questions, you know, why are we jumping these fees? All of a sudden, it used to be $5, now it's $25. We need to have a sound story.
Yeah, it's really for our reinvestment in our water system to make sure that we can supply and create the systems that keep us supplying clean water, not only today, but in the future.
Yeah, I'd recommend that communication starts now regarding this versus us just doing it and then trying to recover from a barrage of complaints.
Right. We agree with you, Councilmember Viper. And the other thing I just want to keep reminding council is that this was driven by our utility master plans and the work that we presented to City Council, and then City Council incorporated into their strategic plan to do, which we saw some of the need for that, I think, on the tour today, that we need to reinvest in some of our water treatment facilities and the assets that we have there. So the master plans drove a lot of the information that's in this 10-year plan, the information that Sharon presented earlier, and the need for the reinvestment fee is because that gives us a stable revenue source that we can make commitments from a capital project standpoint. I heard what you said, Mr. Mayor, regarding the fact that people don't like additional fees, but if we were to count on water rates solely in order to figure out how to reinvest, it would not be a stable revenue source because that varies depending on the season, and that's what we're trying to get to.
I get that.
Okay.
You know, but
all right.
We're going to have to increase something. It's just, what do we call it, and how do we justify it? That's where I'm. And my initial reaction is creating a brand new fee is probably not desirable from my perspective.
Sure, and I understand
I'm just a
that.
political animal. I'm only going from the politics.
Right.
Side of it.
Well, and we understand that. That's why we've consciously called this a reinvestment fee, correct? A reinvestment fee, because we're reinvesting in a multi-million-dollar asset, which is our utility systems, in order to make sure that we continue to deliver the high-quality water that we're known for.
Mr. Marriott.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit confused because one of the earlier slides proposed both a reinvestment fee, but also, let's see if I get the term right here, it was a new infrastructure reinvestment fee, but also adjust the service charge and adjust the water rates. But as we go down in these slides, I think the only thing I really see here is the service charge and the water rates. I don't see a reinvestment fee.
Let me speak to that. That is something very specific we did want your feedback on tonight. Okay. So we currently charge a bi-monthly fee. That is the service fee we're talking about. All of the subsequent slides refer to that being like one line on the utility bill.
Right.
That is your water service fee. From a policy and philosophical standpoint, and I think this is what Mr. Devon was speaking to, is we could reframe that additional $2, $4 bi-monthly, and we could, for transparency, explain to our customers, we're going to continue to charge service fee for meter replacement and the things we always have. The additional new increase is going to be earmarked for reinvestment.
Okay.
So we could do it either way.
Okay.
I think that, to Mr. Mayor's, your point, you get another fee and it feels maybe different than if you just have one lump. I'm reflecting on the last time I got my license plates renewed, and you remember, if you can recall what that looks like, you get a page that's all the different fees, and it's 12 cents for this and 30 cents for this and $1 for that. So there's a philosophy there, right? Are you going to lump them or are you going to split them? Yeah. If there's a desire to split them and then call out this change that we are making after 12 years of not adjusting service fees, we could introduce it as something that is directly tied to the master plan and is specifically for reinvestment.
Right. Okay, I understand now. Yeah. The service fee has that quote reinvestment fee built into it.
In the exhibits.
That $4 includes it, okay.
That's right.
So,
and so from, again, we could make it look different on the bill if there was an interest in a different type of messaging.
Right, okay.
Rebrand it, yeah.
Yeah, so the other question I would have, and this is probably from Mr. Archer, but, to bond, even in an enterprise fee fund, we have to ask the voters by Tabor, is that correct? We don't have to ask the voters.
Because it's a revenue bond, we would not. There is some additional things that we would have to go through with city council, some additional legal requirements, but we spoke with our bond council last week and we could issue without a vote.
Okay, I guess I'm surprised at that. We haven't done that before, have we?
We have. We issued a water revenue bond that paid off in 2020.
And when did we issue that? Must have issued that in 2000. Okay, yeah. So that's why when I say we haven't done it, we haven't done it since I've been around, that's for sure. Okay. I just want to make two comments, or a couple of comments. One is, I agree with the mayor about additional new fees. I think we've got some pretty raw feelings in this community over new fees on people. So I wouldn't do that. The second thing, I guess, I have a little bit of a problem with, or that I would certainly consider, is I really hate the philosophy of, well, look what everybody else is doing. Let's just get to the middle of that, because look at how much margin that gives us to work with, and what can we do. I think, we have in Arvada, we've had great talent over the years that has thought ahead, that has worked efficiently, that has made really smart decisions, and placed our ratepayers, our customers, in a better position than one of our neighboring cities whose first name starts with a W. And I don't think taking that away from our customers is probably a good thing to do. I think they've benefited from that, and I think it's one of the best things about Arvada. So I don't like that as a philosophy. I understand that with this list of projects, it becomes kind of endless, right? Because it takes so long to get to them. There will be stuff on the top of this that's getting done now that might need to be redone by the time you get to the bottom of the list, and so it becomes endless. But I would much rather see us, from a philosophical standpoint, look at really carefully what we have to do now, what we need to do next, what we need to do next after that, and build a strategy based upon that, and not a strategy just based upon, well, here's what everybody else is charging, so as soon as we can get there too, the better. I think we ought to stay away from that. I think from the philosophy of bonding to do some of that, I think given the limited knowledge I have of where we're at in the market now, and Mr. Archer and I talked about this a little earlier today, I think that's probably a really good strategy. Although I think it becomes problematic if you think about, well, we've got to create the revenue that would pay the bond off first, and then we'll go borrow against that revenue we already have. Although maybe there's no other way of doing it than that, but because it takes time, the bonding rates are so low right now, and inflation is so high, and I don't think national policy is going to change enough in the near future for those things to change. So from a financial standpoint, I think it makes lots of sense to bond, but if it takes us 3 or 4 different cycles to get to a margin that we can bond against, I'm not so sure we realize those advantages that we currently have, although we might, if you know what the future looks like 4 or 5 or 6 years into the future. But I'd hate to be, in effect, charging people more than they need to pay now so that we can maybe take advantage of it later. Again, I think about the people on the margins who every dollar's a struggle, and we don't want to needlessly charge them now, even if it may be beneficial to the organization. So anyway, I guess those would be just more comments and random thoughts by John, more so than really policy direction, but it's kind of what I think.
Thank you.
Lauren Simpson.
Thank you, Mayor. So, thank you guys. Great presentation. I followed it quite well. And so I like where we're going here. For me, the comparison to the other cities doesn't seem like we're just racing to get to the average. For me, it reads as this is the cost of supplying this service to municipalities, and we're already doing it efficiently, and we're doing it very, very well. And yes, but costs go up over time, capital has to be replaced, and this is a reality that everyone deals with, and here's the reality in other places, just for a point of comparison for our perspective. That's how I see this. So I don't mind this having the other municipalities, because that helps me a lot, particularly when I look at municipalities that we know have some issues, like the neighbor that begins with a W, although we do have 2 neighbors that begin with W's, so to the other one, we apologize. And so
They know who they are.
we know who they are. So I can see both sides in terms of do we create a new fee or do we increase the existing one? I absolutely understand where the mayor and Mr. Marriott are coming from, in the sense that, you know, a new fee is going to create a knee-jerk reaction by some people, but also to Mr. Pfeiffer's point, an 80% raise in the existing fee is going to likely spur that same reaction. So whichever we choose, and I would be inclined to defer to the mayor's position then, in that we just be very, very articulate in why it got raised. This is capital reinvestment. I know numerous studies, and including here in Colorado, the referendums that tend to get passed tend to be infrastructure bills and reinvestment. People understand that we need these things. We understand that we need clean water. So as long as we really communicate that in the bill to the people, then I think they'll be far more inclined to understand why it's necessary. And so I like that a lot. And then just generally speaking, I mean, if it's not necessary in the future, maybe fees can come down. You know, if it's appropriate 10 years from now, we can see that. I mean, we control that. So, but more likely than not, there will always be new need. But this is such an important and necessary service that we provide to our citizens. And so I think we're on the right track here, and we don't want to wind up playing catch up on this issue. It's better to be proactive about it and have our long-term vision, because if we kick the can down the road, that just makes things a lot uglier. So good job, guys.
Ms. Ford?
I'm going to ask some very basic questions for a moment, just so I can wrap my head around rates and fees. And I'm at a disadvantage because I don't get a water bill since I'm in an HOA. So the service fee is the fee for providing the water and for related things, like you mentioned, the meters, you know, replacing the meters, and what else is involved in the service fee? Just some basics right now, some education for Councilmember Ford.
Sure. So up until this proposal today, the service fee has generally been set so that it offsets the cost of a meter replacement every 20 years. That's it.
Meter only.
Meter only. It is charged on every bill for everybody who has a meter. It's indexed whether you're a single-family home or about 5 or 6 categories of multifamily homes, and then commercial. So we have a suite of different service fees. But again, the way it's been set in the past is that it pays to replace your meter.
And the water rate pays for the water, and then also the whole process for the water and distribution.
That's right. So everything that is on our raw water side that brings water to the treatment plant, the entire treatment process, the distribution process, all the people, the equipment, the infrastructure are paid from rates. And again, up until this proposal, the CIP projects have been primarily paid for out of rates and tap fees. So by adjusting the service charge, it does give us that. It's not far from the philosophy we've done in the past, where we've said that, you know, it helps offset the cost of your meter replacement, but it is expanding that to include other infrastructure that needs to be replaced.
So I struggle with the idea, I'm going to contradict you a little bit, Mayor, because I struggle with the idea that our citizens would be upset with another fee, in that the reason why they were upset with the waste hauling fee had nothing to do with the fee itself. It had to do, in my opinion, based on what citizens told me, was more because the fee was not going back into the roads or into city expenses, for city expenses. I personally believe that with good education and truly helping our residents to understand how these fees would work, I personally think our residents would be okay with a fee. Because I think, I mean, it's not like they're jumping up and down for the fee, don't misunderstand me. But I think that the reality of our need for capital investment is a reality. It's there. And it's not going to go away. It's, as we said, it's only going to get worse. And at some point, we, and we haven't accounted for that for the last 12 years, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, that's right. And we haven't even kept up with the cost of replacing meters either. So it's just we haven't taken a real close look at it in a long time.
Well, maybe that needs to be written about. And, because I personally would be okay with raising fees if that education piece is there where they understand where it's going. Because, I look at the whole waste hauling thing. And this kind of is fresh in my mind because I was discussing the whole thing with a neighbor of mine today who was sort of contemplating, the waste hauling. When we look at it, we have approximately 2/3 of our households that are under the waste hauling program that are not paying that fee. And, the argument, there were many arguments as to, why it should have gone to a vote and, and then the distaste for that fee really was more about where the fee was going, not so much the fee itself. I think that would have been more tolerable by residents if it was going back to the city, but, I'm not going to get into that because we know why that fee is there. So, another way of proposing this too is if more people get on board with the waste hauling effort, because that is what it's going to that is when the waste hauling is truly going to become the most efficient it'll ever be for the city, is when everybody is on board, just like the other 70% of the cities throughout the United States, that this is a utility. We all pay for it. We all use it. We may not all pay for it because, as I was talking to this neighbor, that person is still disposing their recycling, which I used to do too. I was guilty of it when we had nothing here in the city, into Westminster's recycling bins. Again, we can't shift our costs off to other cities like we were doing with waste hauling and recycling. And I think the reality is just that we have to start educating people about what the costs truly are. So I personally feel if we kick the can down the road and we don't start talking about why these fees are necessary, we're going to do ourselves a disfavor.
Yeah.
A disservice, excuse me.
Yeah, to be clear where I'm coming from, Ms. Ford and others, I'm seeing that we're probably going to have to do an increase. It's just what do you call it and how do you designate it? Rather than having a brand new fee, I'm saying that we take our existing service fee, rename it as service and reinvestment fee, so that, and then have the increases there. That's
Gotcha.
So
keep the service fee, but just call it a service and reinvestment fee.
Right. Yeah.
And explain that.
Exactly.
Here's
Justify.
I don't have a problem with that.
Because brand new fees, regardless of waste hauling or anything else, at all levels of government, there are some citizens out there who say you're creating a new fee to get around paying or to go to a vote on taxes, and to use an existing fee, clarifying what it's for, I think makes more sense than creating a new fee. That's just my gut sense sitting here tonight.
My own philosophy tells me that I think we would be absolutely insane as a city if we were to ever bring our water needs before the vote of the people. Because if we had to base our expansion of our water system on the vote of the people, we'd be in trouble. Because unfortunately, unless we are so precise in our education, I don't think, and I think the waste hauling effort was a really good effort to show us truly how many people are paying attention. And that's not to make a, negative comment on our citizens, because I think our citizens are like every citizen, frankly. And maybe a little higher, maybe there's a little bit more educated citizenry in Arvada. I don't know. But based on the waste hauling, it would be absolutely detrimental if we had to bring our water before the vote of the people.
Well, because it's an enterprise, we do not have to. Mr. Pfeiffer?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, Mr. Pfeiffer.
So I agree with the education. We need to do a lot. I agree with the mayor with defining the existing fee and the way it is. And it would probably be good to have a little infographic, on our website or something, just to further explain how fees go to delivering, service versus rates. Rates are for the water use itself and treating it. It's some good information. If somebody wants to look at it, they can at least go to our website and explain it. I still am struggling with. I do agree with the fee to increase. I mean, that's over 20 years at $5.83 is $700, and I'm assuming our meters are more than $700.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just to try to stay up with that. I get it. So, but what I think what gets me, and I think Mr. Marriott said it, is let's make sure the messaging that we're saying here. I know you explained about where we were, and I guess that maybe is an old Jim Sullivan kind of with the rates. But when you talk about fees and stuff, I think we kind of need to stay away from that story, because we don't want to be in the middle of the pack. We don't want to be compared. We want to be what Arvada's been about. And we've been very proud at where we are and the smart work of our folks when they negotiated water rates with Denver Water back in the 60s, So I don't want to say just because everyone else is doing it, let's do it, and that's giving us margin. I agree that is the wrong message to share. I think the message we should be talking about is reinvestment of the infrastructure. But I still struggle, even if we raise the rates, one, we should make it sure it's clear that they know, well, if council approves, that you're going to raise the rates and what it's going to look like for the next 5 years. Because we should say it now, not just give a shocker that, we raised 2% again this year and didn't forecast it with the residents, because that's something we should be always doing, that this will happen for 4 more years or whatever. But I'd like to see on your financial map there, or just the fact that I still struggle around the money we're going to the Moffett or to the Gross Reservoir, because I thought it was 80 million when I first started, and now it's 117 million, and now I feel like I'm hearing we don't even have the money for it, but yet we were told, I remember being in discussion 6 years, 7, 8 years ago, we're great stewards, we've been saving the money, and we're going to have it fully. We put it in an escrow account, and we did all this fun stuff.
That was 36 million.
Oh,
actually.
Well, it started with 36, then we added it, and then so I don't know. Maybe I was getting confused on the annual payments we were making, but I guess I never knew the end game, and that's why I'm asking so many questions about what's the end game, because it's kind of like I feel like I'm having a parking garage deja vu, where I was sold at 19 million and ended up being 45 million. So did I start at 36 million, now I'm at 120 million, and by the way, don't have the money. So we just need to make sure that story's there. So real quickly, would like you to make sure we're clear on that money for Gross Reservoir. Do we have it or do we not have it?
So the model that you see in front of you fully cash finances Gross Reservoir.
Okay.
I will also offer that, and Councilmember Marriott was right on about this conversation, we're also looking at issuing a bond for that as well, and possibly changing the way that our model sits today. And so you would take that approximately $120 million in cash and apply it to the projects that we're trying to bond for in the future, and then bond for gross today, if that makes any sense, to try to take advantage of exactly what Councilmember Marriott talked about. So that's one of the things that Ms. Gillis brought to us at our meeting last week, and we're working on as well. We're just not ready to speak fully on that, but what you're looking at, to not confuse everything, I apologize, Councilmember Pfeiffer, is cash financing gross. That's in the model.
Okay, and so that's fine. So, I mean, I guess one of the things where I guess where I'm just stuck, and you might just need to help me through this, is if these one-time funds or one-time funded capital projects happen, it's kind of like, you know, when you talk about paying off debt, right? You have this monthly payment, and then when you pay that debt off, you add that payment to your next biggest bill, and you pay it off. I'm trying to struggle that or wrap that around this, right? So it's like we hit the $225 million on the top line, and then it's like, well, we don't have any more money to do the rest. So I don't know. There's maybe some way you can illustrate revenues versus those projects, and then when those projects will hit. Now, granted, you're against asset management because sometimes the asset's deteriorating faster than you can, but it would be interesting to just see what we can do, because I'd like to, one, avoid fees if all possible, because I don't know if we've exhausted all those analysis, right? And sensitivity analysis is what we should do. Like if revenues go up, water goes up. If costs go up, what if revenues go down? What does that look like? How we can avoid raising rates at such a dramatic rate, or especially around the fees. I get a little bit, but I don't get trying to jump all the way to 25 and try to be with everyone else. Does that make sense?
It does. Certainly we've done a lot of that work already. That quite large spreadsheet that Jacqueline provided you shows some of that work on that, where it identifies what we have, what we feel like we have available purely on a modeling perspective over that 10-year period of time. And if we end up with additional revenues, we absolutely apply them to the projects in the order that they're needed. The challenge really there is, to your point, how much could we count on versus, you know, if it's a dry year and lots of people are watering, we get X. If it's a wet year, we get Y. And those dollars aren't large enough to take care of the need. So we don't have $10 million of flux in what amounts to approximately $26 million in revenue. So we're not going to see a 35% increase in 1 year.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, I mean, in year 2023, you have a lot of projects. So I'm sure all those contractors are just hanging out. We're looking for this work the way they've been lately. One, either they're still on unemployment, or two, they're just, you're not going to get the people to do this. So let's put some realistic, you know, timeframes of when you can really start projects, because I would suspect the projects on the unfunded down on 2023 would be pushed out anyways. It's unrealistic that in 2 years you'd have 20 more or 12 projects, major projects, start in 1 year in one city.
Certainly capacity is a challenge, both internally and externally.
Because I just wonder what the cash flow would look like long term. So, I mean, I'm resistant of increasing the fees to the $25, $30, whatever mark. But I'm not necessarily against increasing the first set, but I think we have to have thoughtful conversation around years 2, 3, 4, and beyond, just so we can understand that with cross relationship with the increases we do in the water rates and the taps, because we don't have a full picture here still.
Okay, I think you're pretty close, though. I mean, I will offer, if you do a $2 per month or $4 bi-monthly fee increase, that's $800,000. If you do that once, it's $800,000 a year. If you put that in perspective, over 10 years, that's going to do what? An $8 million project? If you look at that project list, there's very few $8 million projects on that list. So, and that's 10 years to get to that number. So I totally understand where you're coming from, and I agree that we're still working through all of that. Certainly when we talked about this initially, one of the proposals was, let's just raise water rates, because that makes it the most simplistic way to do it. But if I came to you and said I need a 10% water rate increase with no context to it, it becomes a hard conversation. So we wanted to be as transparent as possible in trying to identify it. And obviously we've got a ways to go, and we appreciate the feedback, and we'll continue to work towards that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, the analogy for me is the gas tax because, because as gas usage goes down, we're generating less revenue from it. And the same is going to be true in terms, if the doggone mayor would quit telling people to shower with a friend, and use more water, then we might be fine. But we've been appropriately saying conserve water, which is counterproductive in terms of getting additional revenues. So I recognize why you're looking to service fees versus huge rate increases to fund the infrastructure long term. So I get it. Okay, no more lights are on. You may continue with your presentation.
Okay, next slide.
Just another 3 hours or so.
I will try not to be another 3 hours. Next slide is just the sewer model. That reflects the same assumptions that we had in the water model. So you're looking at a $1 or approximately 3.4% increase on a monthly basis, or $2 bi-monthly, under a fee structure, and then a approximately 2.6% operating increase to pay for the pass-through of Metro and to pay our internal operating costs. This will then allow us to build towards, again, the ability to address some capital needs in the sewer fund. These needs are further out in the future, and certainly will be more identified as we complete the overall master planning process, which is coming this fall and hopefully be completed possibly this winter. So there's also a 15% increase in the tap fees in this model for years 2024 and 2025. Again, just an overall forecast. So same logic, just our different funds. And then next slide talks about stormwater. And if you remember, stormwater deals with impervious area, and we've did an impervious area calculation 3 years ago, I think that's the proper year. And what we're proposing in here is no rate increase for next year, and then a 2% rate increase with no service fee or anything like that in this model, and 2% throughout the model, which makes it basically balanced and allows us to do additional capital projects that are on the list. We're also doing an overall master plan study on this to make sure those capital projects are laid out appropriately.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, quick question on the stormwater, and this is just edification. Are we just talking about water that goes in off the street and then just moves to a detention pond or retention pond, and that's it? Does any of these fees cover any of those detention or retention ponds where this water's ran to? Because it's not very much money here, and I know how expensive some of those are. So does the city maintain any detention or retention ponds?
Yes, so the city has, that's primarily funded from the rates that we're talking about here for stormwater. We do have a team that does extensive O&M, jet vacuuming, responding to flooding conditions. There is an emphasis over the next 3 years to get around to all the detention ponds and do a full camera inspection of all of our pipes. We haven't done that primarily because we've been focusing on the CIPP lining project with that same team. So now we're going to be able to use that internal staff to focus more on stormwater. Those are expensive. As I believe you're aware, there's a number of them that are privately owned or the responsibility of a metro district. Those are ones that the city does not staff the maintenance for.
And so is it like Lake Arbor? Is that covered in this when we go and dredge it?
That's exactly right.
I know we've done it twice since I've been on council, so this is the fund that would pay for that?
Yes.
And how much does that typically cost, if you know? Do you know?
For a single family home?
No. For dredging like Lake Arbor, I think we need to realize that $4 million a year, I'm not sure is a lot of money.
Jacqueline, do you know?
Well, we can get it back, but
the latest cost is okay.
Yeah,
we can get back to you on that. We have been working specifically on Lake Arbor and trying to fine tune the cost estimates for that. But to your point, when it comes to levels of revenue at the $4 million level, It funds 2 staff on our operations team. It funds equipment. It helps pitch into joint fund along with our wastewater fund, some things like our jet vac equipment. So the capital dollars are pretty limited for some of those big projects.
And maybe you can give a report on like what's the true demarc between the flood control district and our stormwater, and truly where is the demarcation of responsibility?
Yeah.
And because I know there's some funds we get off that, and sometimes it's some capital, but if somebody could just share that. I mean, I think a few of us have served on that board, but I guess I've never asked a clear question around it. And I think it's always shocks me because I've learned so much about stormwater, that how little we actually collect here, and how this actually protects our communities from being flooded as well, and how little our investment is in this area. So
I certainly think that we're going to be able to provide a lot more detail with the master plan findings, and prioritizing where those needs are, because it is everything from needing to enlarge bottlenecks to being able to do some more intensive capital maintenance on detention ponds. So I'm looking at Jacqueline because her team's leading that effort, but we'd be happy to report in more detail.
Are culverts covered in this, or is that under the other group?
In streets?
Yeah.
They're primarily streets, but
they have more money.
I don't know if that's true. Right?
No, I'm just trying to make sure, because I mean, especially with this monsoon of a season, and flooding's been on my mind a lot lately, and I've seen it happen in different areas like Glenwood and even Candelas in some ways, and I even complimented that the water movement even in Candelas with the dramatic change in elevation was remarkable, and how quickly things can change when that infrastructure, which is not, I always say anything underground is not sexy. When it's not taken care of, how quickly a community can dissolve by just not clearing out grates or vacuuming out the inlets and so forth. So I just curious, because like, again, it's so little money and it has such a big play. So more detail around it would always be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We will.
Go ahead.
All right, next slide. So this is what's coming next. So we're currently in our budget development. I mentioned we're going to be continue to work on a tap fee study, so that what that's going to do is help us understand the revenue that we can forecast from that third dial. We've been talking a lot about the service fee dial and the rate dial. The tap fee dial, we're crunching some numbers on that. We do plan to bring a rates ordinance to you in either September or October as part of the budget adoption, with tap fee adjustments early next year. And then, as Brian was describing, trying to make our best decision-making process forward on bonds and long-term debt. The piece that I didn't include in here, but I've been taking notes as I've been hearing feedback from council tonight. We have a small group that will be making an investment in professional development next month. The American Waterworks Association is hosting a best practices for setting rate structures workshop on that in Denver. And so we, myself included, have a group who's going to go and learn about the other kinds of affordability benchmarks that we might want to consider as we're going forward and adjusting rates in the future. Social equity is certainly a concern, as well as just what are some of the best practices in establishing rate structures for sustainability in the future. So I wanted to share that with you. That we're doing that in September, really as a way to elevate our team's understanding and capabilities. Next slide.
Mr. Marriott's got a question for you.
It's perfect. I have a picture to show you. That's all. That's the last discussion and questions. That's the spillway when Arvada Reservoir is completely full. I love it. I love that picture because you can see it's just at the top of the spillway. So yes.
Okay. So here's the question I have. It's kind of the process. You're planning on bringing a rates ordinance and budget adoption, and I guess I'm maybe a little bit uncomfortable with just this being the information that makes a single option of a decision point coming up here in another month or two about what to me is actually, I think, fairly significant change in policy, which is this reinvestment or infrastructure fee, however it's going to be called or wherever it's going to be contained. Is your plan, I mean, is there anything we can have that's a plan for, I mean, not just a repeat of what we've done here tonight, but like, at what level does council weigh in on how much that fee should be, if it should be, number one, number two, how much it should be, number three, at what rate should it accelerate over time? We talked just briefly about, well, that fee can go up year after year after year till we reach the median, and everybody can have their own ideas. Obviously, I have a little bit of a problem with that. And so how and when, prior to just sitting here to approve an ordinance, can we have another or more in-depth discussion about those kinds of questions? Or when the ordinance comes, are we going to have a couple of choices to choose from there? I mean, I don't think that's probably your plan. If I was in your shoes, it wouldn't be my plan either, so I don't think I'd do that. And I definitely don't think you want us shooting from the hips and amending your proposal. So I certainly don't think that, but I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with saying, okay, I'm at a spot where I'm ready to adopt an ordinance, but essentially, barring something else, there's nothing between now and an ordinance in front of us.
So, thank you, Sharon. Thanks for looking at me like that. What I would, council, this has been a great discussion. And I think what I would like to say is we need to go back and debrief as a team. And I foresee the need for an additional workshop night on this matter. I think we need to figure out timing and when we can do that. But I think we're going to need some additional discussion with you on this. And your feedback tonight was really, I think, important for us to hear in terms of what to call the fee or not to call the fee, or those kinds of things. So I think with the collaboration of our team, we would like to come back for another discussion. Exactly what the timing of that is, we need to huddle on that. We might utilize part of a city council meeting for a discussion, workshop discussion. So if you could give us a little bit of opportunity to get back to you on that, maybe we can look for something in the weekly memo this Friday where we can come back and give you some more feedback.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. You've obviously got some direction, Mr. Devon. We have nothing else on our agenda tonight?
No, we don't.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. It was a good discussion. Thank you all.